boat. So I thought I'd bring them together and have a drink.
Very good.
But inside.
That one, yeah.
Yeah, 11:45.
Okay, right. We'll welcome everyone. We'll open the meeting.
Point of order, Chair.
What?
Chair, I actually raised a point of order understanding on 2.4.6 for discussion of minor matters that aren't on the agenda. Chair, I am going to request that some information, I could get some information from officers provided to me quite urgently today, and I don't mind if it's circulated to other councillors. This is prior to the RFA quarterly report. Chair, in June this year I received a copy of the PwC report, unredacted, and when I received that I got information from Mr Wilson which explained the reason for the matters contained therein to be held strictly confidential. There were three reasons: the existence of a non-disclosure agreement and the breach of information would compromise that non-disclosure agreement, so that would compromise the council's ability to source commercially sensitive information in the future. Number two, legal counsel for one of the property owners said that the release of information about any of the proposed development at this premature stage would almost certainly prejudice the commercial position of the landowner. And three, the disclosure of confidential information would jeopardise this council's ability to negotiate developments. Now, Chair, I don't leak information. I will cooperate with journalists who wish to source information which is publicly available, and I'll put my name to it. But I am uncomfortable when I read in the Herald yesterday information that was confidential in that PwC report has been published. Unfortunately, and both yourself and Councillor Darby have been quoted. Let me quote from that. Planning Committee Chair Chris Darby has confirmed that the railway land at Key Park opposite Spark Arena is the preferred location for the downtown stadium in the confidential pre-feasibility study by PwC. He has also said that Bledisloe Wharf, where the Auckland Waterfront Consortium want to build a national stadium, was in the PwC mix. Other options are Wynyard Quarter, Victoria Park and keeping Eden Park. Now, Chair, I need to know what is the nature of the PwC pre-feasibility report now, and what is the status of any non-disclosure agreements. I need that information prior to RFA reporting this afternoon on their quarterly performance, because I don't want to breach the legoima in my questioning of them about matters that are now in the public domain. So I would like officers to provide me with some information. Number one, I'd like to know when was the decision taken to provide information about the sites contained in the PwC report to be made available to the media, and by whom? Number two, I would like to know were all the property owners consulted prior to the release of that information? Did the owners agree to the release of that information? If not, why not? And if so, are we to conclude that all non-disclosure agreements are now void? Number three, I would like to know why all councillors were not informed that the information contained in that report was going to be released to the media. And I mean, I've got a question for His Worship. I'm happy if he wants to address it now or later, but I would like to know that, noting that the information contained in that report has been officially stated in the media, apparently, by the Chair of the Planning Committee, does the Mayor agree with the release of that information? And if not, does the Chair of the Planning Committee continue to enjoy the Mayor's confidence? And if so, why?
Well, it was a rather long point of order. We are noting.
Well, I've raised the point of order under 2.4.6, so they're minor matters to be addressed.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I'm happy to speak to that, Mr. Chairman. No, I was not aware that the comment was going to be made. no, the comment should not have been made. There has been no lifting of the requirement for non-disclosure. And in answer to the last point, while I'm disappointed that the councillor did that, he put his name to it, he didn't leak it. He enjoys my confidence as chair of the planning committee, but the comment ought not to have been made and is in breach of the non-disclosure agreement.
Is the other information going to be able to be provided to me prior to RFA's presentation? Because it appears that information has been provided by the chair of the planning committee in breach of the non-disclosure agreement. I'm not sure about the status of that agreement now, but I am in a bind because I'm not quite sure what I can comment on.
RFA aren't coming today. No one's coming today of the CCOs. Transport, because we're talking about the regional fuel tax. So I don't know.
Well, we'll need some information in slower time prior to RFA being here, because now we've got a very serious breach of the conditions that were set down by this council in relation to the pre-feasibility report. We were counselled about information contained therein, and we will need that information to be clarified, how we are to treat that information prior to RFA reporting, so that we are not contributing to the same error that apparently Councillor Darby has committed.
Just speaking to that again, Mr. Chairman, because somebody has breached a non-disclosure requirement does not justify a compounding of that breach by others commenting on it. So the non-disclosure agreement remains in place, binding on all of us, and Councillor Darby will have the opportunity, I'm not sure whether he's due here today, to give an explanation for why that breach occurred, and I hope an apology for it.
Is it a point of order? I'm going to be flexible here.
So thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate that. No, it's just further to the point of order raised by Councillor Newman, and it goes to a further aggravating matter, shall I say, and that's the fact that this issue is actually currently before the Office of the Ombudsman, from Councillor Casey and myself, questioning that original decision to withhold information and then subsequent conditions put on it. So this is material to that, because we now have an instance where the reasoning for withholding the information has now been squarely put out in the public domain. So I'm curious to know, in amongst everything else, then what communications there will be with the Office of the Ombudsman, given that this has now very publicly been put out there, and which has been at the centre of the crux of the complaint of Councillor Casey and myself. And just further to that, Mr. Chair, if I may, there is also the implication here that that this is the preferred dislocation mentioned, which I'm not going to repeat under threat of breaching confidentiality. I won't repeat it, but the location specifically mentioned, the clear impression given is that this is a preferred location, where in actual fact there has been no discussion at any time of the pre-feasibility report. So we're in the rather curious situation where this report has, despite its cost and despite all the publicity, has not actually been discussed or debated or any view formed. So we have a further feature here where the suggestion implied, if nothing else, is that there is a front runner here from a council perspective in relation to, well, that's the impression that's given. I'm not saying it's what's being said officially by council, but in terms of the public perception. So I would like, in amongst everything else, the issue of the complaint to the Ombudsman, the implications for that in terms of that process, which has been ongoing for a number of months, and certainly in terms of the lack of any discussion, debate or anything else to do with a location for the waterfront stadium from council. So I'm questioning the appropriateness of that impression or any discussion taking place without some sort of forum with councillors, which hasn't amazingly occurred since that time.
Mr Chairman, this council has made no expression of preference for any site. What the councillor refers to was the authors of the report's viewpoint. That report was not claiming to speak on our behalf at all, and it remains only the opinion of the authors of the report. In respect to the Ombudsman will make his decision on the matter before him and will make it without any effort by this council or this discussion or this disclosure to influence what he comes back on. I don't see this unfortunate incident as influencing what the Ombudsman will report on the matters before him at all.
So I guess, just by way of very quick reply to the Mayor is an interested party in this, so I would appreciate a view from Council Legal as opposed to the Mayor on that question. Thanks.
Councillor Watson, Matthew will be liaising with Phil Wilson and we'll get some sort of answer back by the end of this meeting. Okay. I'm going to let a little bit of, because there's a few people showing interest here, so this is unusual, but I'm going to follow it. Councillor Walker.
Yeah, I'll just pick up on a couple of related issues.
Related to that article?
To this specific item that we're considering right now and this article. And my concern goes to the contractual obligations that the council has around Eden Park. Eden Park's ongoing viability.
We don't have any we don't have any contractual obligation.
We do.
No, they have an obligation to us.
Okay. Well, irrespective, that is a contract that we have with another party, and this is a trading party, and that party can conceivably be damaged by this kind of information. And Eden Park have indicated that they are suffering damage. Certainly that's my understanding. So I have a concern around this. I don't know whether Eden Park were made aware of this disclosure, and that goes to the point that Councillor Newman made. This article also mentions various other parties that are seeking $4 million from us. That's my understanding. And it also mentions the Sports Minister, Grant Robertson. So this is more than just something that involves this council internally. It involves other parties that may or may not have seen the information being referred to. So I have a real concern around the way this council is doing its business. The report that was referred to was done by RFA under the auspices of the Mayor. That was made clear in that report. Obviously, it's not available for disclosure, but that is the status. So there are some significant concerns here around the operation of this council and members of the council.
Yep. I don't think you can really bring the Mayor into it. This is one councillor has made announcements to the press, and that's it. That councillor is not here today and therefore cannot answer to it, so what can I say?
Well, there's another councillor mentioned, and that's yourself, Mr Chair.
Yep, and I think I just basically said, hosing it down, saying, go away. We are talking about other issues far more important than feasibility studies on any stadium proposals at this stage. We've just concluded the LTP. It is suitable for the next LTP.
The other party mentioned
Fletcher
is the port, which is an entity that we have a substantial interest in. And it's a commercial operation.
Yep.
Speaking to the point of order, I have many faults, but breaching confidence is not one of them. and I have found it extremely difficult to pursue some interests that I have had within Eden Park. I've spoken to the Mayor privately, and there is a meeting on Friday at lunchtime with John Duncan and David Wood that has been arranged for me by the Mayor. It has been difficult to be able to talk to those issues that I wish to discuss because of the confidentiality around this document. As part of the legal opinion that you are going to seek by the conclusion of this meeting, I would like for that to incorporate the degree to which councillors, in trying to respect good process, have a freedom to pursue and interrogate those issues, as Councillor Walker has alluded to, which involve the port and involve Eden Park, in a way that is meaningful and responsible to my constituents. So I would request that you broaden the query, and I would also ask that, is it appropriate for in-house legal counsel? Is this an item, because of its very seriousness, because it calls into question the degree of trust that we can have in this body? Would this be a matter that we should seek independent legal advice on? Because we have clearly breached any standing order that I'm aware of with what has occurred.
Matthew will ask that question.
Thank you.
Well, Councillor Casey.
Yeah, I just want to add my tuppence worth to this. I was horrified when I read yesterday's Herald, likewise some of my colleagues, because it is a contentious issue that's still under investigation. But the thing I want to raise is, we have had no discussion on the PricewaterhouseCoopers report. We have had no discussion about Eden Park and its future. Despite that, though, we've had 3 hours, a 3-hour presentation at the Planning Committee by one contender for a waterfront stadium. And I want to throw that into the mix because that was obviously from the same source as yesterday's, I was going to say leak, it's not, it's a blatant
Proclamation.
And that's what worries me. That privilege has not been extended. Now, I haven't read the PricewaterhouseCoopers report, as you know, because I will not comply to the conditions imposed upon me by whoever in this organisation. So I don't know who they were. I read it in the Herald yesterday for the first time. So does that mean that Councillor Darby is going to extend to each of the parties in that report the same privilege that was extended to the set of developers who were before us at the last planning committee? I just have a real worry about this. It doesn't seem like a level playing field. And leaks to the media, sorry, blatant, what's it you call it if it's not a leak? What is it? What did you call it?
It's an unjustified disclosure.
Right. So disclosures like that to the media put parties ahead of other parties. And that's what's bothering me about this whole thing. We need to have the political discussion and we haven't had it yet. And I look forward, if the Ombudsman's looking into his report, as soon as possible, so we can put some closure to that.
Any other comments, councillors? Sorry, we just can't answer. I can't answer.
Matthew was going to.
I can't answer for
I'm
Councillor
happy
Darby.
to.
So, Matthew, do you want to say? Sorry, Christine.
Look,
did you?
I mean, as a person who raised the initial point of order under 2.4.6, I mean, we can discuss minor matters not on the agenda. We've done that.
Yep.
I originally set down a series of questions. I'm happy to email Matthew those questions so that they can be addressed in the fullness of time, and maybe we've got a little bit more time now, but if I could have that information maybe by, say, tomorrow, because I think that we need to have those questions asked and answered. So I'll email Matthew if that helps to expedite the matter, Mr. Chair.
Well, if you can do it now, because we could try and deal with that under
I will be. I'll email
extraordinary
it to
items today.
Oh,
If we can get something
all right.
back
I'll
by
do
then,
that.
how about we have that as an objective? I mean, I don't know how long the meeting's going to go for, but we can note that in 10. Yeah. So when we get to 7, we'll just resolve that. We'll deal with that under 10. If you know what I mean.
I'll email Matthew now. Yep.
Mr. Chairman,
Councillor Fletcher.
the specific matter that I raised of the role that I have of a councillor to pursue these other related issues and whether there does need to be some independent legal advice on this, given the importance of councillors having confidence in the process. I would ask Matthew's comment now, if that's possible.
Through the chair, if it's okay, I'd rather wait and just get Daniel's email. There's been a few things put out there. I think staff just need to reflect on that and come back.
I've forwarded that to you, Matthew.
Right, well, we're back to the meeting, and
See this?
apologies, we have them on the screen there. Councillor Bartley for absence on council business, Professor Collins and Member Honak for absence, and Councillor Cooper is already here.
But we've already started, so it's still for lateness.
And we're going to add Councillor Holst to that on council business for part of the meeting, and we have Councillor Filipana for early departure. I'll move those.
Mr. Chairman,
Yep.
4:15 I have to be gone.
4:15. I'm hoping we're all gone by 4:15. Sorry, Councillor Lee.
Optimistic.
I'm just, given everyone's movements are being monitored in terms of how long, could you make sure you log me in, clock me in? Thank you.
You're not got your little card, Councillor Lee.
Right, we've noted
Time
that.
sheet?
Councillor Lee arrived.
Mr Chairman,
Yes.
just a clarification, we have the UNESCO City of Music function that I have to depart for at 11:45.
I think we should.
Are we lifting
We're going to
the
adjourn the
council
meeting.
at that time so other members can attend
Yeah.
if they choose?
Oh, no,
We're
we've
going to
cancelled.
adjourn the
Thank you.
meeting
We've
for that.
cancelled it. We've cancelled the events. We've got to be here.
All right, we have a
Be no
mover
music.
and a seconder was Councillor Casey for the apologies, yes. All those in favour?
Aye.
I move, Councillor Casey seconded. Okay. Right, declarations of interest. Any declarations? No. Confirmation of the minutes of the 23rd of October. Councillor Simpson will move. Seconded by Councillor Clow. All those in favour?
Aye.
All right, well, that was one person who approved that, plus me. Thank you, Councillor Deputy Mayor. Petitions, there are none. Public input, there is none. Local board input, there is none. Extraordinary business, so we just need to pass whatever. And please help me with the wording. What do we need here?
We're going to deal with an item of extraordinary business under item 10.
Who raised it?
Well, the extraordinary business, I guess, would be questions raised in relation to information subject to a non-disclosure agreement pertaining to the PwC pre-feasibility report.
Okay, I'll move that. Seconded by Councillor Newman. Agree with that, Councillor Newman?
Release of information contrary to the non-disclosure agreement. In relation to the release of information contrary to the non-disclosure agreement.
Yep, that's right. Got that?
In relation to
Yeah,
the release of
we're
information.
getting there, we're getting there. Councillor Newman.
In contrary to.
Not in.
Delete in.
Take the in out.
Yep, that's right. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Michelle.
Okay. Yep, okay, right, so I'm moving that. Councillor Newman is seconding that. All those in favour?
Aye.
Right, right. Right.